Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when you realize peace is not just a vibe, it's a weapon, it's a boundary, it's a declaration. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is protect your peace like your life depends on it. Because baby, it does. I don't know who needs to hear this tonight, but you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You were not created to shrink, to walk on eggshells, to be drained by people who only know how to take. You were created with purpose, with promise, with divine fire, and it's time you started living like it. Toxic people, oh, they'll smile in your face while planting seeds of doubt in your spirit. They'll clap for you in public and curse you in private. But today, we're going to talk about how to deal with them, not just wisely, but powerfully, because the smartest way to deal with toxic people isn't with bitterness, it's with clarity, courage, and strategy. So buckle up, because we're not just learning how to survive toxicity, we're learning how to rise above it, with grace, with strength, and with God's hand guiding us every step of the way. Let's go! There's a powerful difference between someone who is broken and someone who is toxic. And if you don't learn to discern the two, you will spend your life bleeding for people who only know how to bruise. See, broken people are still in process. They're hurting, yes, but they're trying. They may stumble, they may fall, but there's a softness in them. There's a desire to grow, a willingness to be accountable. They don't always get it right, but they know they want to do better, and they're open to correction, to healing, to change. Toxic people, on the other hand, are not just dealing with wounds. They're wielding them. They use their pain as power, not as a testimony, but as a weapon. They manipulate, they gaslight, they twist your kindness into a trap, and the danger is they often wear the same face as the broken. That's why discernment is everything, because if you don't recognize the difference, you'll keep pouring into someone who was never thirsty. Just hungry for control, you'll give grace to patterns that require confrontation. You'll excuse behavior that's actually a boundary violation. Some of us were raised to believe that love means loyalty without limits, that if someone is hurting, it's your job to stay, to fix, to pray it away. But God never called you to be someone's emotional punching bag. Compassion has a cost, but it was never meant to cost you yourself. There is a version of you that is fully loving, deeply kind, and also fiercely aware of who's draining you and who's developing you. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for you and for them is to step back. Let's be real. Toxic people don't always show up with red flags waving. They come dressed in the disguise of I need you. They come in the form of friendships that always circle back to their drama, never yours. They come in the voice of a parent who uses guilt instead of grace. They come as a coworker who smiles in meetings but slanders your name behind your back. They come as partners who can't celebrate you without making it about them. And if you're not grounded in who you are and what you carry, you'll begin to shrink just to keep the peace. But let me tell you this, peace that requires you to betray yourself is not peace, it's performance. And God didn't call you to perform, He called you to walk in truth. So you need to ask yourself, is this person struggling and open to growth? Or are they committed to dysfunction? Because broken people are teachable. They are humbled by their humanity. They apologize and mean it. They take ownership. Toxic people deflect. They blame. They rewrite the narrative so they always come out the victim. It's not your job to diagnose everyone's condition. But it is your responsibility to protect your space. You are not being judgmental when you set a boundary. You are not being mean when you say, I can't keep doing this. You are being wise. You are honoring the capacity God gave you. You are stewarding your emotional and spiritual energy. The truth is, some of us stay entangled in toxic dynamics because we've been trained to believe that leaving is failure, that walking away means you didn't try hard enough. That if you were just more patient, more loving, more prayerful, you could turn that toxic person around. But hear me, you are not the savior. You are not the solution to someone else's refusal to change. Love doesn't mean you let someone slowly destroy you while you carry the weight of their healing. This is where spiritual maturity comes in. Because maturity says, I can love you and still leave. I can wish you well from a distance. I can recognize that your brokenness doesn't give you permission to break me. That's the kind of discernment that sets you free. It gives you the courage to walk away without guilt, without resentment, without having to justify your peace. You don't owe a detailed explanation to someone who's shown you repeatedly that they have no intention of changing. You owe yourself the gift of wholeness. Some of us have confused empathy with enablement. We've mistaken loyalty for bondage. We've called it grace when really it was fear. Fear of being alone, fear of confrontation, fear of what happens when you stop playing the role they assigned you. But you weren't created to play small for someone else's comfort. You were created to rise, and rising sometimes means letting go of what's been weighing you down. You can still honor someone's humanity without tolerating their toxicity. Don't explain your boundaries and force them. One of the most exhausting things you can do is spend your life trying to convince people to respect the lines you've drawn for your own well-being. The truth is, people who genuinely care for you will honor your boundaries without needing a PowerPoint presentation on why they exist. But those who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always challenge them, question them, and guilt you for creating them in the first place. You don't owe anyone a dissertation on your decision to protect your peace. You don't need to apologize for not answering every call, responding to every message, or being available on demand. There is a version of you that was addicted to pleasing people, to earning your place, to sacrificing your rest so others could feel comfortable. That version may have been necessary for survival in a past season, but it has no place in your healing. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are fences to protect what's growing inside. And when you truly start to value your mental, emotional, and spiritual health, you stop negotiating with people who make you feel bad for taking care of yourself. You start to realize that no is a complete sentence, that I'm not available for that is not rude. It's necessary, that I don't have the capacity for this conversation right now is not avoidance, it's wisdom. Too many of us have been taught to soften our no with 1,000 justifications, to pad our boundaries with disclaimers and footnotes, hoping the other person won't feel hurt or offended. But boundaries are not about how others feel. They are about how you function. If you constantly feel drained, anxious, or manipulated after an interaction, that's your spirit signaling that something needs to shift, and the shift doesn't always need a meeting. Sometimes the shift just needs action. You don't have to wait until you're on the verge of breakdown to say enough. You don't need permission to reclaim your space. You don't need consensus to decide what works for you in this season. Some people will call your boundary selfish because they were used to your self-abandonment. They were comfortable when you always said yes, when you put their needs first, when you played small so they could feel big. But growth doesn't require approval, it requires alignment, and when you're aligned with who you truly are, you start making decisions that serve your future, not just your feelings. You don't just draw lines, you protect them. You don't just speak your truth, you live it, and people may not like it, they may talk, they may distance themselves, but that's not your responsibility to manage. Your job is to protect the version of you that's finally learning to breathe without permission. Boundaries are not an act of rejection. They are an act of reverence for yourself, for your time, for your energy. And let's be real, some of us have been giving VIP access to people who haven't earned general admission. We've allowed people into sacred spaces of our mind and soul simply because we were afraid to seem difficult. We said yes when we wanted to scream no. We showed up when we were depleted. We forgave without accountability. We explained ourselves to people committed to misunderstanding us, but no more. There is a shift happening, a holy boldness rising up in your spirit, a voice inside of you that says, I don't have to justify my peace. That voice is God reminding you that stewardship starts with self. That love isn't proven by how much you tolerate, but by how much truth you walk in. And the truth is, when you enforce your boundaries without apology, you teach people how to treat you. You shift the dynamic from chaos to clarity. You stop managing their emotions and start honoring your own. The most dangerous narrative you can believe is that love equals access, that if someone loves you, they're entitled to every part of you at all times. But even Jesus pulled away, even Jesus rested, even Jesus chose solitude. Why do we think we're more divine by burning out for people who don't even value what we carry? When you enforce your boundaries, you're not being hard, you're being healthy. You're not being cold, you're being clear, and clarity is kindness, both to yourself and to those around you. Because when people know where you stand, they stop trying to push you. They either rise to meet you or fall off naturally. But either way, you're no longer carrying what's not yours. You're no longer trying to explain why you're finally choosing yourself. You're simply walking in truth, and that's where your power lies. Distance is not disrespect, it's wisdom. There's a sacred kind of strength in knowing when to step back. In a world that romanticizes access, that teaches us to always be available, always be responsive, always be there, choosing distance can feel like betrayal. But it's not. Sometimes the most powerful form of self-love is creating space between you and someone who keeps wounding you in the same place. Not to punish them, not to make a scene, but to give yourself the room to heal without being re-injured. We've been taught that closeness is a sign of love, that proximity equals loyalty, that if you care, you stay, that if you're real, you remain, but wisdom will tell you something different. Wisdom will whisper, step back so you can see clearly. Wisdom will nudge you, create space so you can breathe, because not everyone you're close to is good for your soul. Not every relationship deserves access just because it has history. Just because you've always been there doesn't mean you still should be. Loyalty is beautiful, but loyalty without discernment becomes bondage. There's a myth that you have to choose between being kind and being distant, but the truth is, you can be both. You can honor someone's humanity and still decide that their patterns are too costly for your peace. You can pray for someone and still block their number. You can forgive someone and still unfollow them, because distance is not about bitterness. It's about boundaries. It's about recognizing when someone's energy, their choices, their dysfunction is invading your mental, emotional, and spiritual space. Some people bring chaos every time they show up. Some people only come around to drain, to stir up confusion, to pull you into their emotional storms. And if you're not careful, their storm will become your atmosphere. Their dysfunction will shape your day, your mind, your decisions. So when you choose distance, you're not being cold. You're choosing clarity. You're choosing calm. You're choosing to no longer live under the influence of someone else's storm. Let's talk real. Distance doesn't always come with closure. It doesn't always come with a conversation. Sometimes it just comes with a decision, a quiet one, a private one, the kind that says, I don't need to explain. I just need to move differently. And people will notice. They'll notice the shift. They'll notice that you don't respond the same, don't show up the same, don't engage the same. And some will call it petty or fake or even cruel, but that's because they were more comfortable when you didn't protect yourself. We live in a culture that often values performance over peace, where we're celebrated for how much we can tolerate instead of how well we can discern. But discernment will always lead you to distance when the environment becomes toxic, when the connection becomes one-sided, when love starts to feel like a transaction and not a safe place, and discernment will teach you that distance doesn't have to mean disconnection. It just means redefinition. It means I see you, I bless you, but I no longer invite your presence into my inner world. Some people will only learn to value your presence when they feel your absence, and that's not a manipulative tactic, it's a reality. When you've always been the fixer, the helper, the peacekeeper, people can begin to believe that your availability is endless, that your patience has no expiration date. But choosing distance teaches them asterisk asterisk and yourself asterisk asterisk, that even grace has boundaries. That even kindness has limits, and those limits aren't cruelty, they're care. You have to be bold enough to step back from what is familiar if that familiarity is costing you growth. You have to trust that space doesn't have to be empty, it can be healing. It can be holy. It can be the soil where you rediscover your voice, your value, your vision, because sometimes people are too close to see you clearly. Sometimes you're asterisk, too close to see yourself clearly. And distance allows you to recalibrate, to ask the hard questions without being silenced, to feel your own feelings without being gaslit, to remember who you are outside of the chaos they bring. There is nothing wrong with taking a step back to protect your peace. There is nothing weak about needing space. There is nothing sinful about knowing your limit. Distance doesn't mean you've given up on someone. It means you've chosen to believe in yourself enough to stop allowing what harms you to have daily access. You're not running. You're realigning. You're not ghosting. You're growing. You're not being cold. You're being clear, because clarity and peace are too valuable to trade for comfort and closeness that leaves you empty. Protect your energy like it's your anointing, because the truth is it is. Your energy is not just your vibe, your mood, or your emotional state. It's your capacity, your essence, your divine fuel. It's the very atmosphere you carry when you walk into a room. It's how you show up for your purpose, your people, and yourself. And too many of us have been leaking energy into places, people, and problems that were never ours to fix. We wake up tired not because we didn't sleep, but because we've been fighting invisible battles all day. Fighting to stay patient, to stay silent, to stay calm in the middle of chaos we didn't create. Some people are not toxic in the obvious ways. They're toxic because they constantly pull from you without ever pouring back. Every time they call, it's a crisis. Every time you speak, they spin it. Every time you try to create space, they guilt you. And if you're not careful, you'll confuse being needed with being valued. You'll confuse giving all of yourself with being loved. But love that drains you is not love. It's extraction. And it's time to start recognizing the difference. Your anointing is not just what you do. It's how you move. It's your discernment, your insight, your intuition, your ability to shift an atmosphere simply by being in it. And not everyone deserves access to that. Not everyone is mature enough to handle what you carry. Just because someone wants your presence doesn't mean they're ready to honor your presence. And when you let the wrong people have access to your energy, they start to shape your reality. They start to influence your thoughts. They plant seeds of self, doubt and insecurity, and call it advice. They pretend they're helping, but they're actually hindering. And before you know it, you're second. Guessing your voice, your choices, your calling. Protecting your energy means being intentional about who you share your thoughts with, who you allow to speak into your life, and who you let too close to your vulnerable spaces. Not everyone who listens is safe, not everyone who smiles is sincere, and not everyone who says they love you actually knows how to love you. Love without emotional responsibility is not love, it's chaos. It's inconsistency. It's confusion disguised as connection, and the more you grow, the more you realize that your energy is sacred, and sacred things must be protected. It's not selfish to guard your time. It's not rude to say, I don't have the bandwidth for this right now. It's not mean to remove yourself from conversations that leave you drained and confused. Some of us were raised to believe that being emotionally available to everyone at all times was a sign of goodness. But goodness that costs your grounding is not sustainable. You are not a well for people to endlessly draw from without ever being filled. When you start protecting your energy, people will notice. They'll notice that you don't respond to chaos like you used to. They'll notice that your peace is louder than their drama. They'll notice that the access they once had now comes with boundaries. And yes, some may call you cold. Some may say you've changed. But what they're really saying is that you've stopped playing the role they were comfortable with. You've stopped being a source of constant emotional labor. You've stopped carrying weight that was never yours. Your purpose requires energy. Your healing requires energy. Your clarity, your creativity, your spiritual sensitivity, they all require energy. And when you're constantly depleted, it's not just your mood that suffers. It's your mission. You can't pour vision from an empty cup. You can't build legacy while constantly managing chaos. You can't live full when you're always being emptied by people who only know how to take energy. Protection looks like silence instead of reacting. It looks like taking a walk instead of taking the bait. It looks like limiting your time around people who constantly complain, manipulate, or drain. It looks like choosing joy on purpose. It looks like surrounding yourself with people who don't just take your energy but amplify it. People who feed your faith, who speak life over your name, who remind you who you are when you forget. Your energy is a gift, and like any gift, it must be stewarded well. That means being honest about who and what is costing you too much. That means checking in with yourself and asking, do I feel more whole or more hollow after this interaction? It means being okay with disappointing others if it means preserving your peace. Because at the end of the day, protecting your energy is not about being distant or detached. It's about being deeply rooted, rooted in purpose, rooted in truth, rooted in the kind of love that starts with you. You're not called to fix everyone asterisk. Some people are God's job. Asterisk, this is one of the hardest truths to accept, especially for those of us who carry the weight of responsibility as if the whole world depends on our ability to save it. We want to be the heroes in everyone's story, the ones who can mend broken hearts, heal old wounds, and pull people out of the dark. But the reality is, some people are beyond our reach, not because we lack compassion, but because their healing is not our mission to complete. It belongs to a higher power, a divine hand, and sometimes the smartest thing we can do is let go and trust that. There's a sacred humility in recognizing your limits. It's not about giving up. It's about giving over. It's about understanding that love sometimes means stepping back and allowing God to do the work that only He can do. We're called to love well, to serve, to support, but we are not called to carry everyone's burdens on our own shoulders. Trying to do that only leads to burnout, bitterness, and a sense of failure when people don't change despite our best efforts. Some of us have been trapped in a cycle of trying to fix toxic people because we believe if we just love them enough, if we just pray hard enough, if we just sacrifice enough, we can rewrite their story. But love is not a formula for control. Love is a gift, not a project. And when we try to control others through love, we lose sight of the freedom that love is meant to bring. Toxic people often resist change because their toxicity protects them. It's a shield for their insecurities, a defense mechanism for their pain, and unless they want to step into the hard work of self-reflection, accountability, and growth, no amount of outside intervention will help. You can't force someone to heal if they aren't willing to face their own brokenness, and when you try, you risk losing yourself in the process. The truth is, God is the ultimate healer. He sees what we cannot. He understands what we don't. He works in the hidden places where human hands can't reach. Your role is to release control and trust that He is working even when you don't see it. This doesn't mean you stop loving or stop praying. It means you stop carrying the weight of responsibility for someone else's transformation. It's okay to say no to being the fixer. It's okay to say no to endless explanations, to constant emotional labor, to being the person who always has to pick up the pieces. You are not failing in your faith or your love by setting this boundary. In fact, you are stepping into the wisdom that comes from understanding the limits of your influence and the power of divine intervention. When you stop trying to fix everyone, you create space for your own healing and growth. You reclaim your energy, your joy, your purpose. You begin to surround yourself with people who are willing to do their own work, who respect your boundaries, who value your presence without demanding your sacrifice. You learn to love people from a place of freedom, not obligation. You learn that some relationships are seasons, not lifelong commitments, and that's okay. There is a peace that comes with releasing control. A peace that says, I did my part, I loved, I showed up, I spoke truth, and now I trust God with the rest. This peace guards your heart and your mind, protecting you from the weariness that comes from trying to fix the unfixable. It allows you to be present for those who are ready, without carrying the weight of those who aren't. Loving from this place also changes how you engage with toxic people. Instead of trying to change them, you begin to pray for them honestly, without strings attached. You set boundaries that protect your heart without cutting off compassion. You recognize that your role is not to rescue, but to love well while trusting God to do the rescue work only He can do. When you accept that you are not called to fix everyone, you step into a deeper level of faith. Faith that says, God is bigger than this problem. God is the true healer. God's timing is perfect. You no longer carry the burden of other people's choices or behaviors. Instead, you carry hope. Hope that transformation is possible, even if it doesn't happen through you. This shift is not easy. It requires courage to let go of control, humility to admit you can't do it all, and faith to trust the process. But it's necessary for your own well-being and your spiritual growth. Because when you try to fix everyone, you lose sight of who you are and who God created you to be. Your calling is to live fully, love deeply, and serve faithfully, without the weight of fixing the unfixable dragging you down. It's to protect your peace, so you can be a light in the darkness, not a casualty of it. It's to recognize that some people's healing is beyond your hands and in the hands of God alone. This truth frees you to focus on your own path, your own growth, and the people who are ready to walk alongside you in a healthy, reciprocal way. It invites you to release resentment and guilt and replace them with grace. Grace for yourself and grace for those still on their journey. You're not called to be the savior in every story. You're called to be faithful in your own, trusting that God's plan is bigger, wiser, and more powerful than anything you can imagine. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not a favor you do for others. When we hear the word forgiveness, it often gets tangled up with the idea of excusing bad behavior or pretending pain didn't happen. But true forgiveness is much deeper and far more freeing than that. It is a radical act of reclaiming your peace, your power, and your purpose from the hands of those who hurt you. Forgiveness does not mean you forget or allow toxic people back into your life as if nothing happened. It means you refuse to carry the poison of bitterness and resentment any longer. Holding onto anger and resentment might feel justified, even righteous, but it's a heavy burden to carry every single day. It weighs down your spirit, clouds your mind, and steals your joy. Toxic people thrive on the emotional chaos they create, and by holding onto the wounds they've inflicted, you keep giving them control over your inner world. Forgiveness breaks that cycle. It severs the chains that bind you to the past and frees you to live fully in the present. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about you. It's about choosing peace over pain, freedom over frustration, and growth over grudges. It's a deliberate decision to stop letting someone else's actions define your emotional state. This kind of forgiveness is an act of courage because it means confronting your pain head on, acknowledging it, and then releasing it on your own terms. It's not a sign of weakness but of incredible strength. Many people struggle with forgiveness because they mistake it for reconciliation. But forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same. Forgiveness is an internal process. It's about your heart and your healing. Reconciliation involves rebuilding trust and often requires the other person's willingness to change and respect your boundaries. You can forgive without reopening the door to toxicity. In fact, sometimes forgiveness means walking away, protecting yourself, and refusing to engage further with harmful people. When you forgive, you stop being a prisoner to your past. You let go of the stories that keep you stuck, the what-ifs and if-onlys. That replay like a broken record in your mind. Forgiveness allows you to rewrite your narrative, not by erasing the pain, but by choosing how it shapes you. Instead of letting bitterness harden your heart, forgiveness softens it and creates space for healing, growth, and hope. Forgiveness also reconnects you to your purpose. When you carry resentment, you're carrying baggage that slows your progress and distorts your vision. You become reactive instead of proactive. You spend energy on what's already happened rather than what could be. But when you choose forgiveness, you reclaim your energy, refocus your mind, and realign with your true calling. You step into your destiny unburdened by the weight of past hurts. This process is not easy or quick. Forgiveness is often messy and nonlinear. There will be days when the pain resurfaces, when anger bubbles up, and when the temptation to hold on tight to bitterness feels strong. But forgiveness is a practice, a daily choice to lean into grace rather than resentment. It's a journey of healing that requires patience, self-compassion, and sometimes spiritual support. Forgiveness is also a form of self-respect. It says, I am worthy of peace. It says, I refuse to let anyone else steal my joy. It says, I am choosing to be free. When you forgive, you're not minimizing the wrong done to you. You're acknowledging it, feeling it, and then deciding that your future is more important than your past wounds. There's a power in forgiveness that's transformative. It turns pain into wisdom, scars into strength, and wounds into windows of opportunity. It frees you to live authentically, love deeply, and lead courageously. It breaks the cycle of toxicity and opens the door to healthier relationships with others and with yourself. Forgiveness is not just a gift you give yourself. It's a testimony to your resilience. It's a declaration that you will not be defined by hurt, but by healing. That you will not be controlled by bitterness, but by blessing. That you will not be held captive by the past, but be liberated into the future God has for you. When you forgive, you reclaim your power. You stop giving toxic people the permission to live rent-free in your mind and heart. You stop being their emotional hostage and start being your own hero. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget. It means you remember without pain. It means you honor your story without being owned by it. And that is true freedom.